Okay, this is 8th grade actual lesson 5.5. In this lesson, students will use their understanding of vertical and supplementary angles, as well as corresponding angles to find the measures of angles that are formed when parallel lines are cut by a transversal line. The standard covered in this lesson, once again, is 8G5. The page numbers out of the hardcover book are 212 through 218, and out of the practice journal, pages 111 through 114. Today we're going to review a little bit, some vocabulary, and then we're going to be working with solving for some missing angle measures using corresponding as well as vertical and supplementary angles. So lines that have this, lines in the same plane that do not intersect are called parallel lines. One way to remember, I know lots of times what happens is kids get these two mixed up because they both start with a P. The one way that I remember the difference between parallel and perpendicular is parallel actually has a set of parallel lines in it with the two L's. So two parallel lines are going to be two lines that will continue forever and never intersect. Lines that intersect at a right angle are called perpendicular lines. So when you have a perfect T, or an upside down T, if those were perfectly straight lines and they created a 90-degree angle, then they are considered perpendicular. They do not have to create four 90-degree angles. They could create two like I did here. Okay, so perpendicular lines create 90-degree angles. A line that intersects two or more lines is called a transversal. So this red line right here is what we call a transversal line. It's going to be cutting through two or more parallel lines. So as I'm using those vocabulary terms, hopefully you'll have a good understanding. So corresponding angles, they correspond to each other, are going to be when you have a transversal. Remember, your transversal is this letter T right here. This is our transversal line right here. Okay, when a transversal intersects pair lines, corresponding angles are congruent. So congruent copies, they're exactly the same. So in other words, if I knew that this angle measure here in this red was, let's just say it was like 60 degrees, okay, a corresponding angle is the same angle on the next set of the lines. So this would also be 60 degrees. So although this looks complex, really what we're doing is we're taking what you learned back in section 2 and we're just applying another set of lines. Okay, we're going to go ahead and give you a second set of lines, but you're still only going to end up with two angle measures just like we did before. So let's go back and review what we did back in section 2. Okay, when we were given a set of intersecting lines, these are just considered intersecting because they don't create a perfect 90-degree angle. When we were given those, we were able to use vertical angles to solve for this. So this would be 40 degrees. Okay. And then to solve for our other angles, we had to use our supplementary angle concept where this line creates a straight line between these two. So a straight line is 180, so we would take 180 and subtract off the 40 degrees that we knew here, which would give us 140 degrees. And then across from there, this is also 140 because those are vertical angles. So now what we're going to be doing is actually just adding another set. So when I add that other set, you're going to end up basically just copying this down on that second line. Okay, so if I have in my top right hand, I don't want to say corner, but my right hand set a 40-degree measure, then my top right hand set is also going to be 40 degrees. Okay, these correspond to each other. They're equal to each other. Now I can just copy. If I want to work clockwise, I can do that, or I can continue corresponding angles. This corresponds to this angle measure, so this is 140 degrees. Okay, this corresponds to this angle measure, it's 40 degrees. And this corresponds to this last one of 140 degrees. So take note that as we solve these, we still only have the two different degree measures. But here we had 40 and 140. It's just that now they're giving us that second set of lines. Okay, so let's go ahead and practice some more of this. So you're taking stuff from section 2 and working off of section 2 information. So it says use the figure to find the measures of A, angle 1 and B angle 2. Okay, so we're going to have to use corresponding angles to begin with. Okay, so corresponding angles. If I were to take this and cut it in half right here, okay, this set and this box is exactly the same as this set and this blue box. Okay, if you have to think of it like that, you can think of it like that. It's kind of like you take it and you cut it in half. Okay, so this angle measure right here corresponds to, well, this one right here. So if that's 110, then angle 1 is also 110 degrees. Okay, now if I go through and find angle 2, well, I now know that this is 110 here. So I had to use corresponding angles. Now I've got a straight line between that 110 and that 2, which is 180. So if I take 180 and subtract off this 110 that I know, that's going to give me 70 degrees. Okay, so angle 2 is 70 degrees. I can now go through, not that I had to on this one, but I can now go through and solve for all of these angle measures. Okay, so let's see here. If that's 110 and above it is 70, then this is 70. And now I can use vertical angles. These are vertical. So that's 70, which means to the right of this 110 is 70. And then these are vertical, so 110. These are vertical, 110. Okay, I know today, or in this one, they were just asking us to find one of those sets, but it's good practice to go through and actually practice doing all of them. I noticed on STAR, some of you guys are getting these types of questions. So it's important to maybe pencil out really quick, maybe one set of those 4 angles that are created by an intersecting line, and then working off of where that would correspond with the question, whatever angle measure they're asking for. Oops. Okay, so here it says use the figure to find the measures of the angle, explain your reasoning. So what I would recommend for those of you that maybe are struggling with it, I would just start with one set. I would fill out that entire set. So like for myself, when I go through and I look at this, let me bring this to the front. When I look at this, I'm going to try and focus on just that set right there. Okay, if you have to take a sheet of paper and cover up the part that doesn't have any angle measures, then do that, because you have actually solved this before. This was in section 2. So now I can use vertical angles. Vertical angles, this is 63 degrees. Okay, how do I find the other part? Well, here's a straight line. So if I take 180 minus 63, it should give me what, 117? And I just double check myself because I don't want to mess up. Okay, which means this is 117 degrees. Okay, so now I'm going to do all of my corresponding angles. Everything is in the same position. So if I were to start with this, okay, that corresponds to this one right here. If I need to, I could cover up the other side. Okay, I know my numbers aren't covered up, but I can kind of cover up and see, oh, okay, so they're in the exact same order. So this is 117, which means this is 63. So I just found out that angle 1 is 63 degrees. Okay, I can continue copying, or I can do vertical angles. So angle 2 was 117 degrees. Okay, practicing that concept. So you're using stuff from section 2 to practice that. Corresponding angles are going to be equal to each other. So use the figure to find the measure of the numbered angles. So this time you're going to solve for all of them. Okay? So what I would recommend, and I'm going to move this in just a minute, but I would recommend solving for that first. Go through and figure out 1, 2, and 3. Then you're going to use corresponding angles. So I want you to go ahead and pause your video and work your way through this and solve for angles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so when you look at this, just before I go through and actually give the answers to these, corresponding, so what number or what angle corresponds to 75? Well, that would be on the right side of that parallel line. So it's going to be the right side of the parallel line, 75 degrees. Okay, now I can go through and I'm just going to go ahead and work off of this line A and solve for all angles there. So angle 1, you should have had 75 degrees. And then to find out 2 or 3, I'm going to use a straight line. So I'll just visualize that one. 75 and angle 2 have to equal 180. So that gives me 105, which means this is 105. Now I can copy exactly what I have in the exact same order. This is 105. This is 75. This is 105. They're in the exact same order going in a circle there on each of those parallel lines. Oops. All right, so go ahead and try this one. So try one more, work your way through this one, and when you're finished with this one, I want you to come actually show me your vertical or your sets of angle measures. So if you're working on this at home and I'm not with you, then go ahead and do this one on paper so that you can show it to me, and I can go through and kind of take a peek to make sure that you're understanding those corresponding angles. Okay, so you can pause your video and get all of this information, draw a rough sketch of this, identify where your 59 is, and then put your number, your angle numbers in there. If you don't want to put the numbers in there, you can leave them off, but I just still want you to find the angle measures for all of those. So you'll find all 7 of those angle measures. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, and I think that's it for this lesson, for this part of the lesson. So it's kind of a lot to absorb. Once again, remembering that when you work with these, you're going to be using vertical angles, angles that are straight across that cut from each other. You're also going to be using supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are 2 angles that create that straight line. And the third thing you're going to be using are our new information, our corresponding angles. So 59 corresponds to this angle 5, so that would also be 59 degrees. And continuing the pattern of just copying them down in the corresponding spots. Okay, good luck with this part of the lesson.